Thank you for tuning in to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast, a no judgment zone podcast that covers lifestyle, entertainment, news, and sports. Even though KC doesn't watch sports, but these are minor details. By the way, he reads tarot cards too. Yes, I really mean it. He reads tarot cards too. And now, the host you've tuned in for, KC Phoenix.
Welcome back to the Keeping It Real with KC podcast. I, of course, am your host, KC Phoenix. And before I go any further, KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. I'm attempting to get comfortable in my chair for those who are watching the video. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. And just a heads up, there is a truck with a loud engine right by my window. It usually starts up around this time now. So if you hear that in the background, that's what that is. Now that that's been said, I decided to do a daily thought today, which I haven't even put it on my other part. Usually I have certain things organized where I will, I have like all of these things on my laptop, and I'll set stuff somewhere where I can see it. That way, when I have to do uploads, it just makes it easier. And I haven't put it in the proper section. Aw, man. Hold on. Undo. Now, I know I copied this. What on earth? Okay. Hi, Mercury. How are you? What's going on, Mercury? Goodness. For those who don't know, even though you should if you follow the show, Mercury is in retrograde right now. There we go. Now it's fixed. But yeah, it wasn't there because I didn't put it there at the beginning. Okay. So people are allowed to change. I decided to do this for the daily thought because one thing I've noticed is like people, sometimes they just go looking for things from like 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, sometimes 30 years ago. Oh, well, you did this, or oh, well, you said this. And I'm just like, you know, people change, right? Now, there are some cases where people don't change. Some people are forever the same, and that's just who they will be. And I'm not knocking them for that. You know, people are people. It was just like this one guy. He said something yesterday. I watched him saying something yesterday on TV, on another commentary show. And the commentators were like, oh, he should be banned immediately for saying that. He shouldn't have said it on the show, da-da-da-da-da-da. And I was like, well, I'm not exactly mad the guy said it, because he just said what was on his mind. I always tell people, I'll never be mad or offended at you for speaking your truth. I'll always be disgusted by you telling a lie. Just saying. So, yeah. But let's go back to this change thing. First of all, I know people who they used to think one way, and then as time went on and they were to see other things, or they were exposed to other things, their point of view changed. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. For other, like I said, for other people, they just stayed the same, and that's fine. But it's almost like there's this whole gotcha thing going on where people are just looking for something. They're like, oh, I found something. See. I told you they were bad. This just proves they're a bad person. That's another thing too, which might be a totally separate daily thought within itself. People need to learn how to separate the dark and the light in someone, because all of us, there isn't anyone who is exempt from this. As long as you are in a human body, there goes the truck. As long as you are in a human body with a spirit, a soul, your soul is the light, your flesh is the dark. All right. There are times where your soul shines through, your true light shines. And there are times where your darkness shines through. There are people who do really, really positive things in life, and they take advantage of, of this life that they have, and they spread more light to the world. And then there are those who sometimes get caught up in the darkness, and then they end up spreading some darkness to the world. And then there are those who spread both, where they've done some good things and they've done some bad things. I will give you a quick example. R. Kelly, according to the courts and what they say, and what some other people have said who have interacted with him, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But according to that, R. Kelly has done some dark things. However, R. Kelly musically, inspirationally, because and that's the other thing. It's amazing how people want to have long memories about all the bad stuff, but all the good stuff, it's just like, oh, I don't remember that. When did that happen? But fine, whatever. Back to what I was saying. But let's not forget about when I Believe I Can Fly was almost played in every church doing the praise dance from East Coast to West Coast, and probably on other continents too, with I Believe I Can Fly, which R. Kelly did that song. Also, the Whitney Houston song, I Look to You, R. Kelly did that song. There are a lot of inspirational songs that R. Kelly has done that have touched people's lives, where they may have been feeling down at a certain point in their life, but then they listened to the song that R. Kelly produced, something from his light, not his darkness, and that lifted them up. Now, I'm not saying that just because you recognize that, okay, there were some good works done, that you should just discard all of the bad stuff that was done. There was actually a very, very, very famous dictator in history who did some horrible things, but also there were some good things that the dictator did do. But because he was a horrible, horrible person overall, his darkness pretty much just covered everything up. Those moments of light that he did produce, not many people would know to think about it. But what I'm saying is that people can change. Some people may be in a point where they are, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say victim. That's not the word. I need another word, please. I need a word. Okay, I'll go with that. Fine. Where they are bound more to their darkness than to their light, even though bound can have a negative connotation, but with darkness, I guess it would be negative. Where they are channeling, thank you, we can use that one, where they are channeling their darkness more than their light. And something happens in their life where they change, and then they get in touch with their light and they start to channel more of their light. That happens. It doesn't mean that all of the stuff while the darkness was going on didn't happen, but there was a change. You have to remember that in the Bible, there were a few prophets, people who served the divine, that did some stuff. From David to Saul to Moses to whoever, Joseph. Really, no one's, if you really dig into the history of the well-known people in the Bible, almost no one's hands are clean in there. And I'm just using the Bible as an example. And this isn't my thing saying, this isn't me cheerleading Christianity or downing Christianity. I'm just using it as an example. The thing is, though, that they were granted grace, first of all. Second of all, they changed. A lot of people have the ability to change. Now, some people don't believe they have the ability to change. I remember it was so crazy. I was watching the Avengers Endgame again, and it was with Nebula. Spoiler alert for those who still haven't seen Endgame, which if you haven't seen Avengers Endgame yet, I don't know what to tell you. But I was watching again with Nebula, and then the Nebula from the past was having a conversation with the Nebula from the future. And the Nebula from the future was saying that you can change. And the Nebula from the past was saying, no, I can't change. He won't let me, talking about Thanos. But it's clear that it was in the orbit of Nebula to change, because Nebula clearly changed because the future Nebula had changed. The future Nebula is what the result was. So that Nebula would eventually change. That Nebula just had to go through things. And if you follow Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers Marvel MCU, and you look at how Nebula evolved through, because her and Gamora did not get along at first. And all of these things happen. All of these events happen to Nebula. And then each time something happened, it's like it started to wake her up a little bit more. And I'm not an advocate of wokeness, because let me hush. I'm not even going to go there. But yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that events that happened in her life, in her timeline, is what helped her to change. And she did change. Now, let's say that there was somebody out there talking to the future Nebula, the changed Nebula, and they're like, well, you did this for Thanos, and you did that for Thanos, and you did this for Thanos, and well, how could you have done? And it's like, okay, dude, these people know what they've said. These people know what they've done. You have to, well, I'm not going to say you have to, because no one has to do anything. We all have free will. Sometimes it's in everyone's best interest to grant grace to people. People make mistakes. And sometimes, I'm going to throw this caveat out here too, as well. Sometimes when others are saying someone else is making a mistake, they may not be making a mistake, because if you go back through history, there are certain situations where people are like, oh, during that time, oh, that's a mistake. But then history plays out. And then it's like, oh no, that person who was the troublemaker was actually the person who was sane and was in the right, on the side of the right, on the right side. So you have to keep that in mind too. That's why you can't get caught up in that group thing. That's why you have to do your own research on someone or something and then come to your own conclusions, not what everyone is telling you to think, do, or say. Just saying. So, yeah. But the point is that with that, the Future Nebula, she changed. You can't hold it against her. You can bring it up of the things she did, of the planets and all this other stuff that were destroyed because she was the daughter of Thanos, the sidekick, and everything that happened. But she changed. That's the point. She changed. It was an actual change. She went from a supervillain to a superhero. And I'm bringing this up because some people don't give others the chance to become a hero because they constantly see them as the villain based off of their past actions of something they did a long time ago. It's like they don't want to give someone a chance to be the hero. They don't want to grant grace. If Nebula, let's say that we remove Nebula from the equation, and I'm just using this because most people know Marvel and the Avengers. Let's say we remove Nebula from the equation, the new Nebula, the Future Nebula. There are a few things that may not have happened had she not been part of the equation as the hero. So, and I say that to say this. You're holding something against someone. You're canceling somebody for something that they did a long time ago, or holding a grudge for something in the past, or attempting to destroy them for past actions a long time ago. Where this person, now that they are channeling their light instead of their darkness, there may be something of benefit that they can bring to humanity. But when you are still stuck on, oh, they said this, they did that 15, 10, 20 years ago, you're not giving them the opportunity to bring light to the world because you're still hung up on the past. I'm not saying excuse the actions of people. I believe in holding people accountable. What I am saying is holding a grudge does not do anyone any good. And by holding a grudge, I mean attempting to make it where this person can never be part of society for what they did. If we look at some people throughout history, and especially going back to the Bible, if no one granted grace to those prophets, things would have been a lot different. If they were just like, no, you're canceled for life. You're not redeemable. You're irredeemable. There's no way you can be redeemed based off of what you did, based off of what you said. There's no way in the world. Then it's kind of like no one would get out, because let's be honest, we all have stuff that we quote unquote could be canceled for. We all do. From something 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40 years ago. We all have that. Whether you want to own it or not. You need to own it. Because owning it is part of you being redeemed and receiving grace. When you don't own it. Now see, that's the other thing too. Nebula owned what she did. Gamora, who also changed, owned what she did. Now, if someone doesn't own what they did, that's different. In addition to that, what are they doing now? What are they doing now? Are they still doing the same things they did 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago that have you in this mindset of, oh no, we don't need to grant this person grace? And really, when someone is outcast, when someone is canceled, when someone is destroyed, what good does it do for you? How does that benefit you? Don't worry, I'll wait. How does that benefit you? Again, I'm not saying you have to participate in someone's atonement. I actually did an episode about that in a Daily Thought. For someone who is on their process of atoning and seeking redemption for the things they've done, they can't force the people they wronged to participate in that atonement. They just can't. They can ask, but they can't force. But what I will say is that there's nothing wrong with just living your life. And if someone has changed, give them the opportunity to show they have changed, because people can change. People change all the time. People change their minds constantly. I mean, that's human nature. Sometimes it takes others longer. And again, going back to my caveat, there are those times when the quote unquote troublemakers are actually the ones who are on the right side of history, too. And maybe everyone who is, canceling and doing this and doing that need to take a step back and be like, okay, wait a second. Why are we doing this again? Maybe we need to research this more. And then they find out, oh, we were on the wrong side. We might owe that person an apology, even though I don't like apologies. But these are minor details. We might need to ask that person to grant us grace, is what may need to happen. Regardless of where any of this falls on who needs to be granted grace or not, because we are all human beings, we all can use grace, is what we can use, instead of attempting to tear everyone down. Allow everyone to change and redeem themselves. Because again, people can change. They're allowed to. And that is my daily thought. KIRWKC.com, main podcasting platform. This podcast is carried on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Overcast, Bullhorn, Amazon Music, Audible, and several other podcasting platforms. Please feel free to listen to this podcast on whatever platform is most convenient for you. KIRWKC on all the social media platforms. Until next time, be blessed.